this was where a lot of my young childhood was spent.
Right.
You know, before my father passed away.
Right.
And I got to. It was weird because as I grew up, I started to realize that we organized so many things as kids growing up, and
the skill of organizing baseball is skill of organizing for labor.
That's correct. So, and the funny thing is, when you're organizing for work, you're actually building teams of people. And I look at it as sports is like an ideal way of looking at organizing, because when you're building a team, you're building a team to win.
Right.
Right? And when you're organizing in labor, you're building a team to beat the boss.
Right.
So it's essentially the same thing, right? A team needs coaches.
Right.
A team needs really good players.
Right.
Everybody has a job on the team.
Right.
Right? And me, now that I'm 50, I am the old coach, right? And I'm making sure the players, I have to find the right players that are going to be able to win against the boss. And when you want to win and you're a championship team, what are you doing? You're practicing, right?
Right.
You're practicing every day to be better, to get better.
Right.
Same thing that I do. We're training workers to get better, to practice organizing conversations, practice, you know, the important parts of an organized conversation, you know, the introduction, meeting people, listening to them, agitating them around the workplace issues. These are all important practice tools to give tools to the workers that are trying to organize their workplace so they can take on the boss. And I look at it as, building a very strong team of workers that are willing to spread the message throughout the workplace and take on the boss. So essentially, kind of me being a kid here growing up helped me do that. So, you know,
That's so true.
It's pretty interesting, you know.
So true.
But like I was saying earlier, in 1992, I lost my dad, and I was 17 years old, and kind of seeing what life was like through a different lifestyle. Because before my father passed away, we lived a pretty decent middle-class life. You know, my father, he made decent money, and he was able, you know, back then inflation's not like it is today. Back then a working family with just one person working could make a livable wage, could put food on the table and buy a home, or even another home, you know. So when he passed away, he had, in 1979, they had bought a house in East New York down there. And I believe it was like $38,000 in 1979. And I was 17 years old in 92. And 2 years later, around 94, I remember my mother, she was struggling a little. It was 2 years in, and she had went through a lot of the savings that they had saved. Thankfully, she had a tenant that was paying rent, but it was very hard for her still. So I remember, you know, at that time, you know, things started changing. There wasn't that many vacations anymore. We started eating a little differently, you know, less meat on the plate. It was more a lot of rice, a lot of beans, salads. You know, I remember, and then I remember my mom saying, listen, things are tough. You know, we got to start thinking about getting some work because we don't want to lose the home. And I knew that I had to find a job. I found a job at UPS in 1994 as a young part-time preloader, loading trucks for UPS drivers. And I learned very quickly what a union is about and what collective action can do, because I noticed our coworkers used to stick together. And it was the first time I ever felt that kind of, you know,
team
camaraderie, that team.
Right.
Funny enough, 3 years later, I was really embedded in UPS, and I was working to try to really help my mom, which the money was helping, but I needed to make a little more. So I started working as an air driver as well. So I would go to UPS at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, load the trucks till about 8 when the drivers came in, go into the locker room, change into a uniform, and deliver priority mail for them. And then I was working 6 days a week because I would come in Saturday mornings to deliver the priority Saturday mail. But they were separating my job into 2 different jobs and paying me one rate for part-time and paying me another rate for part-time driver.
Wow.
So essentially in 1997, probably one of the largest strikes in history, 185,000 workers went on strike for 2 weeks at UPS. And I was one of the reasons for it. People like myself who were working 2 separate shifts but not getting paid a regular full-time salary like the drivers. The drivers at the time were all making over $20-something an hour, and our part-time workers were all, were still making $9 or $10 an hour for loading trucks, which in '94 was still, '97 was still okay. Minimum wage was about, I think, $4 an hour, so you're making above minimum wage. But as workers, we knew that we deserved more. Inflation kept rising. You guys know during the 80s and 90s, especially into the 90s going into 2000, inflation started to skyrocket, right? Houses went up in price ridiculously. People couldn't even afford homes. You can try to buy a house today, you'd probably be dead before it gets paid off, and your children would be stuck continuing to pay it. But so in 1997, we went on strike, and that's the first time that I saw like the biggest collective action of my life. We're talking 185,000 workers across the country. All UPS told UPS, hey, back up, our workers deserve more. I mean, the president at the time was Bill Clinton, and he was, just about begging our president at the time for our international union, Ron Carey, to come to the table. And he was like, don't talk to me, talk to UPS.
Right.
They're the ones that aren't giving our workers what we deserve. When they want to come to the table, they know what we want. Because at the time, the CEO of UPS, or the guy who was running the company, he was saying that he only had one offer for us. And you guys can actually Google on YouTube the 1997 strike, and it shows how he kept saying this is the last, best, and final offer. And we were like, well, that offer is not good enough. And we went out on the street in August for 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, UPS lost, I can't remember how many millions of dollars, but by the end of the strike, they came back to the table and gave us a really good contract. Workers like myself were able to get a full-time job. I actually have a picture that I wanted to show you guys. It was, so after the strike, there were, a lot of articles written about the UPS strike and how workers felt about the strike. So I'm gonna show you a picture of me when they did an article of the young 22, 23-year-old Antonio Rosario talking about how, it took full-time workers and part-time workers coming together to win more for everybody. And this was the article here, if you guys can take a look at it.
This is backlighting. Okay. That's you.
That's me. Hold on, Let me see if I could lighten it up a little bit and make it brighter.
Mainly because the reflection. Okay, let me click. Wow, you're so handsome. Look at that. Okay, good.
When I look at that picture, it's funny, this picture, I knew it had been done, this article, and when it came out, I had gotten it because they were sending it to all the UPS workers. It was like a part of a monthly magazine that came from the Teamsters. And when I got it, I was so proud of the article. Back then, when we used to load the UPS trucks, it was a little clip on the back of the truck. So when you had the packages, you would strike off. It had numbers 1 to 150, depending on how many stops that driver had. So every time you put a box in the truck, you'd strike the numbers. So I took the number sheet down, put it on the other side, and I put that picture up. And I'd work with it right next to me. And people would walk by, and some of the managers would walk by and say, take that down, and they would make fun of me, and I was like, you're just mad that you got beat, and I'm making more money now, thanks to the union. And then one day somebody took it down, and I never saw it again. And it wasn't for many, many years. And I kept saying, somebody's got to have this magazine. So in 2023, UPS again was messing with the workers and kept saying they didn't have enough. Things are tough. Amazon's out there, FedEx and DHL and all these other, there's so much. And we were like, we don't want to hear that. We know how much money you made, okay? You've made billions in profit. We're not talking millions here. You are a multi-billion-dollar corporation. So don't pretend like you can't give us some more. And again, they wanted to take it to the end, and we were gonna strike again. I mean, the threat of strike was real. We not only scared them, because of all the rallies and the protests. It was a year-long campaign. We started protesting a year out. The anniversary of the '97 strike was in August, we started protesting in August. We had rallies about Martin Luther King Day, where a lot of, you have a lot of black and brown folks that work at UPS, and we have a lot of our black speakers, or a lot of our black workers come up and say some of the things that Martin Luther King did to help people in the civil rights movement, and really like a social economic justice too, right? Because when he was killed, he was actually fighting for striking sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, right? So he did a lot for labor. He kind of brought that. That's how he started bringing people together, right? A lot of the blacks, the whites, the brown folks.
That's why he got shot.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but yes, that is true. Because until then, right, he was doing his protesting. The minute he started putting labor and then they took him down. It's sad, but that's how these people operate, you know? Anybody who's ever tried to create change is usually, their life is diminished in some way. But thankfully, their work still lives on, you know? All they're doing is making the martyrs for us to look up to and want to keep fighting for people. But one of the interesting things that I was trying to get was that, so during the 2023 contract campaign, now I'm not a kid anymore, right? I'm not this 22, 23-year-old kid that was being told to like follow UPS trucks and scare the supervisors, right? It was more like, now I'm more of an old general leading a group of workers to win a victory, right? The old coach now, right? And it felt really, it felt different, right? Because instead of being this person that's just being led, I'm now being followed and fighting this big company. And I think that one of the differences I saw was that we didn't have to strike because our threat to strike was so real that, I mean, if you guys Google some of the 2023 UPS contract campaign stuff, a lot of it was rallies for a year, protests, fighting for Martin Luther King Day, fighting the temperature standards in the trucks so we can get air conditioning for the vehicles. Like, we won so much in this contract, and it literally went down to the wire because there was during the 97 strike when Ron Carey was president, he had taken us on strike and won so much for our workers. But in 1998, they ended up trumping up some charges on him for illegal campaign contributions. He was dismissed of all those charges because it wasn't him. And it was like some people that were doing some things under his watch that he wasn't paying attention to, unfortunately. So then Hoffa, the son of Jimmy Hoffa, ended up taking office in our international union. But what a lot of people don't know is that there was an organization back then called Teams for Democratic Union. If you see, I'm wearing the sweater right now. I'm a proud member of Teams for Democratic Union. They're a caucus that was meant to help reform a lot of these bad Teamster locals that weren't doing that they didn't have the best interest of the workers, you know? And I've always been proud of that. But what happened before me was that there was organized crime in our union, right? After Jimmy Hoffa, what had happened back then and then moving into like the 80s and then into 90 was organized crime had embedded himself in our union and had been using a lot of our funds, and we had to fight organized crime to get out of our union. And Teamsters for Democratic Union put a team together to do that. And in 1991, because before then, every international president of our union was picked. You're next. I gotta go. You're gonna take over now. You're my friend, so get in here and do it. It was the good old boys club. If you're my buddy, you're gonna take the next spot now. Well, we were done with that. No more. Because a lot of times the mob themselves were the ones picking whoever they wanted to put in there, right? So in 1991, we fought them and we won what was called one member, one vote, right? And we were able to get our first democratically elected international president, which I don't know if you guys know this, the UAW just did this recently. Thanks to the help of a lot of Teamsters for Democratic Union reformers who showed them how to do it. And look at them where they're at now, right? They're doing amazing, amazing work. And I'm very, very proud of being part of this organization that was able to help this organization do what they did. But going back, so we were able to fight that in 91. They just won that in like 2022, right? Like this just happened. But so we got that. Ron Carey became our president, and then in '98 that happened, and Hoffa ended up taking over. And little by little, all the work that I saw that we had done was slipping away, and it was like 20 years of us just eating shit, if you pardon my French. It was like, they kept saying we were getting these big contracts, but a lot of times one group of people were being taken care of and the others were not. And the part-time workforce that they had fought in '97 to get to a level where I was doing well and other part-time workers are doing well, they were making it worse and worse and making it more of a throwaway job, to the point where workers there were no longer making above minimum wage. They were at minimum wage, and a lot of times they were stuck there for some time. And as a driver now, because now I was a full-time driver, I was saying to myself, this isn't right what's happening. And we knew we needed to make a change at the top again. And this Hoffa, we knew we had to get him out. So in 2016, we had our first shot and we lost. And then we went at again. We knew we had 5 years to try to make it happen. In 2018, 2 years later, we had a contract. And that contract, we had this huge vote no movement because it was a lousy contract. It created a two-tier system for drivers.
Oh, that's terrible.
It did not do much to promote part-time salaries, and we voted it no. There was a huge percentage of workers, well, I don't want to say huge, I want to say the percentage of workers that voted against this contract was big. The problem is the amount of workers that voted for this contract, not enough people came out to vote. And there was this old archaic law in our bylaws that states if 2/3 of our membership doesn't vote, the union has the right to implement the contract. And unfortunately, we didn't even get, I think maybe 70,000 workers voted on this contract. Out of that 70-something thousand workers, only I would say 80-something% of them voted no. But we had over 300,000 workers
Didn't vote.
We didn't make the 2/3, and they were like, you know what? And UPS was willing to go back to the table because of that.
Right.
But the union was like, no, it's okay. We're going to implement this contract. And it was a slap in the face to 300-something thousand workers, especially the 70, 80,000 that voted.
Right.
And we were angry. And I've never been so angry. When you talk about agitating issues, this contract was a big one. We weren't going to let that happen again. And I remember with Teamsters for Democratic Union and a lot of union activists and a lot of my Teamsters Local 804 members, in the union I'm a part of is Teamsters Local 804.
Right.
We represent about 8,000 UPS workers here in New York, with the exception of Staten Island. There's Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Manhattan, and Long Island. And those workers in our local who voted, our local's a high voting local. I mean, we usually get close to 40% of our members to vote, which is big. A lot of locals don't get 10, 20%, but there are some locals that do get into the 30s and have an engaged membership. I mean, I would love to have 80% of our members always vote on everything, but it's just, we got to get there. We got to get there. But to make a long story short, so we were so, it was a slap in the face to our workers, and we went on a rampage. We knew we needed to change leadership at the top. We could not go another few years with Hoffa, or he was retiring, he was going to put somebody else in there that we weren't even going to entertain that. So we went on a mission. My local, we hit, I think, the whole East Coast. Like, we were in Pennsylvania, we were in Jersey, we were in Virginia, all the way down to, just going from state to state. And then TDU members from other parts of the country were doing the same, right? We were in Kentucky, we were in California.
What do you mean by you were in? So you drove there?
We were driving.
Off work?
Yeah.
On your free time?
The Road Warriors. That's
Road
what we
Warriors.
called ourselves.
Yeah.
There was groups of teams that would go out, and we would go to UPS hubs
right.
in other states to talk to members, to tell them they need to vote for Sean O'Brien.
Right.
He's going to change the leadership at the top, and he's already said that he is willing to strike UPS.
Right.
The other guy, on the other hand, wasn't willing to strike UPS. He kept saying, I don't think that's such a great idea with Amazon and all these
Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah.
companies, and we were like,
This-
we don't want to hear that. We know what we need, and we need a real credible strike threat to force them to give our workers what we want.
Right.
And sure enough, everybody knew this was going to be the team that was going to take on UPS, and not only that, they restructured the whole organizing department. Like, they knew that organizing is the lifeblood of the Teamsters, and they went and took a chance on people like me, who were, you know, old warriors in this campaign, who had shop floor actions against supervisors and managers at UPS, people that have brought workers together to take on the bosses, to help organize other shops, because we are the ones that are doing the work. Like, who better than me to speak to an Amazon worker about why you should join the union? Right? It wasn't about getting kids out of college, they're there too, but it was about having workers talk to workers, and that was sort of our program. Let's get workers talking to workers and showing them that there's a better way. I can tell you what the difference is, because I've been in this movement for almost 30 years. But so yeah, this is my 30th year as a Teamster, and the last almost 3 years have been me organizing and bringing, you know, knowing that this group of people we put up there know how important organizing is. It's the lifeblood of our union. Knowing that Amazon is one of the most powerful, greedy corporations. They exploit all their workers. Knowing that they're the company we need to focus on. They're the company that needs to have a union. And not only that, if you think about union density in this country, we've gone down below probably 10% at this point. People are tired and they're fed up. I mean, Trader Joe's, Amazon workers, Starbucks workers. I mean, everywhere you look, even the Waffle House, okay? The Waffle House workers are organizing. It has been amazing. I mean, just recently in California, they fought to raise the salary for the food workers up to $20 an hour. And now all the restaurants are complaining that, oh, we're gonna have to raise our prices. Stop it. Stop lying. You don't have to raise nothing. Just pay your workers. That's all we're asking for people to do. People can't even make $100,000 a year here in New York and have a house. You have to be making $200,000-300,000 just to survive. And who's making that these days? Inflation is through the roof. People are tired. People are fed up. People know unions need to make a comeback, because unions are the ones that are going to fight. You know, Amazon Labor Union, Amazon, you know, Teamsters, all these unions are really RWDSU, all these unions are coming together, and even the UFT, the United Federation of Teachers, right? Like, everybody knows that we have to make a change, and we got to bring up that density. We got to come back. If not, you know, what's going to happen? We're going to let these, you know, billionaires, this billionaire class, keep exploiting us. They're making an obscene amount of money. We're not, again, you know, people are like, these are billions and billions. People, Elon Musk is worth right below 200 billion. Bezos, 200 billion. These oil tycoons, billions and billions. They can live 4 lifetimes and not spend this money. There are people that are suffering. There are people that need help. There's corporations that have the ability to pay their workers more. Right now, a UPS driver, because of this contract, most UPS drivers now will start at about $23 an hour, but in 4 years, they're making $49 an hour with pension, with benefits. Amazon makes more money than UPS. He could easily afford to pay his workers that, or even better, and give them a good pension, give them good benefits, and job security, because they can fire any Amazon worker for any reason. No worker deserves to be treated like that. So when I talk a little bit about myself and my life and how I grew up, and seeing from a young child growing up through the movement, it's like generational, right? Like, I've seen it. I see my kids growing up. My kids are 13 and 11. And I don't want them to grow up in a world where they can't find a good job. They don't need to be doctors and lawyers to make me happy. If they do, and I'm putting money aside for college, I want them to go to college. Every parent wants their kid to get a good college education, make good money, but I'm not going to be mad at him if he doesn't, because there are a lot of good union jobs. There's a lot of good trades out there, you know, mechanics, elevator mechanics, construction. These jobs are needed. Drivers. There's so many good jobs out there. People forget what makes this country move. While people are sleeping at night in their homes, there are trucks on those roads all night long, making sure that there's food on the shelves at the supermarkets, making sure that there's pencils and pens for the schools, making sure that people get the essential items they need. You know, this country could not run without workers. And one thing that a lot of these unions have been talking about, especially Sean Fain from the UAW, is a general strike in 2028, where workers will come together and show these corporations that all that money, all those billions, and all that exploitation and how you've treated the workers is not going to stand anymore.
Why 28?
Because that's when a lot of contracts are ending. You know, the UPS contract, the UAW.
Wow, that's a great opportunity.
That is a great opportunity to really show the world, you know, how important we are. You know, let's go to the 1930s when these big strikes, like the big strikes of Minneapolis, when the Teamsters had these huge strikes back in the 30s, right? And people had the soup kitchens and they got community involved. You know, we're living in a different time. There's so much stuff out there to preoccupy us, right? You have all this new television, you have a computer at your fingertips, people are watching TikToks, people are worried about the next new Michael Jordan sneakers that are coming out. They've forgotten what's important. A lot of times we have to wake them up. We have to show them that, hey, there's something going on out there, and because you're distracted, because they're keeping all of this in front of you, you're forgetting to pay attention to what's really happening. We have to show them that, because there was a time in the 40s and 50s where the corporations maybe made, like a CEO of a corporation made, I would say 40 times that of an average worker, which still sounds like a lot, right? But it's not like insane. It's still, you know, 30, 40 times that of an average employee, you know. Well, that's gone. These people are making 100, 150 times that of an average employee, 200 times that of an average employee. Why did we let it go so far? You know, 40 was already like, and now we're at a point where it's like, you're making an obscene amount of money. This is ridiculous. Right. You can give back. You shouldn't be making more than 40. You know what? We do the work. You shouldn't be making more than 10 or 20. Right. You know what? Even better, let us handle this. Let the workers handle the production and the money that we're using to embed into what we're doing. Because we know we're the workers. We've done this. So it's about changing the culture. It's about changing society to see things in a different way, where working class people have the power and the right to show these billionaires that we don't really need them. Because do we? What do they do? Right. Buy jets, live in mansions, go to Bora Bora with their girlfriends that are 20 years old when they're 70? No, we're done with that. You know, we don't need them. They need us. And it's time for people to stop being scared of the bosses, because they need to be more scared of us than we are of them. There are more of us than there are of them. And we just got to keep making sure people understand that, right?
Great.